quite impressive for all the speakers, to share so many insightful experiences and understanding about a community. We select you here in this group because the 3 countries you coming from representing 3 types of developing model in the world and economically successful in some ways, whether it's in a suicide way, or green way, or elitism way, it's kind of models, we are talking about it. So I would love to give the chance to the audience to raise up your questions. Before that, I want to have some warming up on the question, especially to 3 of you, all of you, on the international collaboration. So in your, general understanding, how your local communities, is enough to collaborate with the international community to share those experiences, or not enough, or what's the problems, or maybe the future possibilities you want to develop, or you can see the potential of that?
Yeah, I think for us in Germany, the biggest problem is the language barrier. I think it's the same in Austria. We speak German. We normally communicate in German. But outside of Germany, Austria, parts of Switzerland, and maybe the Netherlands, nobody understands us. And because we have a lack of resources, so all the activists who are working are mostly working in the German language, because we have to get things done in Germany. We have to solve some problems in Germany, and there's no more resources to translate it. But we need to solve this problem because there are lots of debates we do in Germany around information policy before lots of other states are starting it, like privacy issues, like data retention, like also the fight against net censorship, which we won. And I hope, but I hope since 15 years that there will be a technology which works and which is better than Google Translate to do it. Otherwise, we need to figure out other ways.
I think in terms of international collaboration, I think in the context of the film, it has been an infinite set of possibilities. I mean, people, when they hear about the film, they want to help the film, screen the film, etc., etc. I think as a filmmaker, I was asked as a filmmaker what is the most important skill I need to have, and I often think that the skill is to be a piper, as in you really not just need to make a good film, but and tell a good story within the film, but you have to tell a good story about the making of the film. A story that's immediately accessible across cultural boundaries. That means it's something that you can tweet, it's something that people can understand immediately, and you give them a reason to help you and to work with you and inspire them to innovate alongside with you. And I think that takes a kind of awareness, a storytelling ability, and I think also stamina, because you have to, the thing about internet is that the film doesn't really end. You keep building it as you go along. It becomes different. So.
I think the question Isaac raises is a very difficult question for the Chinese internet users. Because the most important group of users, as I am imagining, is the farmers group or workers. But for international personnel to try to build some contacts or relationships with those groups will be very sensitive under the current Chinese conditions. And also the NGO. In China, NGO is, it's very hard for NGO to not only to be established, but also to develop, because there are some certain laws which restrict the development of NGO very much. And so if you want to support NGO, also you will run the, you will run a lot of barriers from the government side. That said, we still can do things, I think. For example, there is some very successful technical training for NGO, which is going on right now in China. And also, it used to be there was some get-together for the different bloggers from different regions to communicate and to talk with each other. And Isaac actually has a forerunner in doing the, try to promote the exchange between bloggers from various regions of the world. But it also, if this get-together is highly influential, then the government will come and interfere with it. So that's a great challenge for the, for the free information flow or free exchange between people.
So, any questions from our audience?
Hi. Hi. By listening to you guys, and especially listening to the China experience and the German experience, it seems somehow clear that censorship is not only a problem of countries that are categorized as repressive regimes traditionally. Like we see that we have these things, these issues to solve, and that freedom is not granted in countries like Germany or Spain. We have like these attempts to impose an intellectual property law that reduces freedom of users online. So I would like maybe some of you to comment or to go through maybe possible initiatives to tackle this globally, since the contexts are very different. But what are the global ways to tackle this?
One global way is to tell the stories, to explain it, what's happening in Spain and in Germany. 2 months ago or 1 month ago, there was a situation because of the UK riots in Great Britain, where there were debates about using net censorship infrastructure they have against child pornography to stop people on organizing and mobilizing to these riots. And there was a reaction by the Chinese government. They said, thank you, you use the same argumentation like we do, and in the past we were the evil people, and now you are evil too. And we have to put this more into the public, that in the European way, we think we have these values of freedom, of civil liberties, and we have to be a Vorbild. Was heißt Vorbild? We have to use our image worldwide to show other repressive regimes that you can. Auf Englisch jetzt. Also auf Deutsch, ich sag's mal kurz auf Deutsch. Also
I'll continue in German. As Western countries, we ought to serve as models. We ought to play a model role, showing that with our values, or despite the fact that we have these values, we don't need these dangerous infrastructures.
2 more questions.
Yeah, this is, fascinating. It's just listening to all of these. And one of the things that is recently coming up is that the same technologies are used for censorship and surveillance everywhere, right? The deep packet inspection, the, what else do they have? They have the I think Cisco might have some. I'm not sure which companies. I shouldn't name them wrong, but they've been kind of recently exposed from Iran to Germany to China. And these companies are here in Europe and in the US. So what are your thoughts about, I mean, is there any point to trying to put some codes of conduct on what can be sold where? Or is trying to fight the technology game just sort of a losing battle, and we should be concentrating on sort of politically trying to enhance anti-surveillance and pro-privacy kind of systems? I mean, especially if, in China and places like that where these technologies are widely used, how crucial is the state's capacity to precisely surveil versus other factors?
Actually, when we're talking about the Chinese internet censorship, it's a whole system. It's not only the technical side like the Great Firewall itself, but also it's a lot of personnel and money investment, and also even I will include the so-called people here knowing what's the 5 cents party. I mean, the people who are online but speak for the government, they are netizens, but some of them are not netizens, but many netizens also speak for their party, and so that's also included in the censorship system itself. And we can also see the trend, which is I think is moving from the center also to the to the even to the personal computer, which you are using in your own bedroom. So there used to be some software called Green Dam, which is the government asks every computer user. I mean, if you are buying a new computer, you have to have this software pre-installed. That means not only you're on the public network, you go to internet cafe and you get all those filtering systems. Still, if only you use your computer at your own bedroom, you can still be at the government's control. But on the other hand, this Green Dam initiative actually was defeated because not only because of the protests from the netizens, but also from the pressure, from the like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, like the U.S. Trade Representative, like the European Chamber of Commerce, from the international pressure. So I think this specifies the ways. On the one hand, the netizens will use all kinds of ways or results or all kinds of methods to try to defeat censorship. On the other hand, there must be some pressure from not only on the some companies which is working inside China, but also from the from the government's side. So I think it must be both ways.
Yeah, it's for me it's a shame for Germany that in countries like Libya or Egypt, after the revolutions, there were found German surveillance technologies in repressive regimes. So we as a society can say we want to stop using this technology, we can to stop exporting these technologies, we can do it on the European level, but nobody's really willing to do it because it's an economy factor. But I think we need this debate, we need to educate more people that the packet inspection or data retention technologies are risk technologies for our civil liberties, that we don't want to use it. And we won this year a fight in Germany, the fight against atom plants. 40 years or 50, around 40, 50 years after they introduced them, the whole society and the political the whole political parties said, okay, in 20 years, it's over with this technology. And I hope we get it faster to say we don't want these risk technologies which are dangerous for civil liberties worldwide, and we want to stop them here, and we want to stop our companies to export them to repressive regimes. I hope and I want to encourage everyone to help anonymous communications infrastructures like the Tor system to build up and to hold them sustainable, to help people worldwide to use them and to communicate anonymously and safe.
Suk, do you have some comments on this?
I think actually I'm not really a hardware kind of person, so it's very hard for me to talk about it. I think from the point of view of social media and I guess the social web, I do feel that to deal is always a double-edged sword. What you can use to broadcast messages can also be used for surveillance, to spy on you. And I think what I find is that the mix of stories, in terms of you see more and more darker stories emerging, whether it's the UK riots or other examples of people getting into very, very serious trouble, scandal, because of social web. I think the gap here is actually sophistication. Because I think to be able to use these tools very well actually requires a level of literacy that we don't have yet. You know, I think the people that I learned from when I first got into Twitter and Facebook, they have that sophistication. They know the context of every platform and how they differ from one another and what to say and what not to say. I think that there is a need to have those softer skills as well, because I think that increasingly you'll become a very complex, mixed picture that is not just a good thing for openness and freedom of expression. It's also being used to repress freedom of expression. Yeah.
Thanks. Before our last question, David, do you have any question from internet?
Well, one person asked, why is there no
UK rights. Okay.
There were two things that made me think happening in the last 2 months in my area. And one thing is that the board of a big company in Austria said they didn't want to use Facebook as a means of communication for a campaign because of Africa. What they meant is the revolutions in Northern Africa, and they were afraid of the tool. And the second thing was that I read that, I don't know why it's Blackberry, because Blackberry for me is a manager tool, that Cameron planned or wanted to cut access to Blackberry system of all systems. I don't understand it even, during the riots. And I think that worries me. Both of these things worry me. I mean, I'm on your side that you need to educate people in Europe, but there are not enough people to educate all the people in Europe, probably. But why isn't that a subject? Because I think this kind of high-level fear amongst especially managers and high-level politicians worries me a lot.
Yeah, I'm worried too, but I don't know what else to say.
Okay. Okay, questions here. That one first, yeah.
Thanks.
Andreas, your last.
Well, my question is towards the topic before, towards education. I wanted to ask if what you're talking about is not only about rights or about techniques, how to get around some, governments who want to get pressure on you or something. It's also about the way of thinking about nation. Because if you look at the internet, everybody knows that it's a global thing and that you can communicate, just across borders everywhere. And at the same time, nations have the power about the net in the practical way, so they can, as you all know, shut down pages or whatever. But at the same time, the governments are kind of refreshing the idea of nation towards education if you look at the UNESCO Roadmap for Arts Education, you can find like culture, you know, internet is culture too, and Twitter and all those things. You can find specific parts where they tell you that they want people to be individuals and to be reflective and to be critic. And at the same time, they say that a good education is only based on a good, on a good common sense of nation in terms of you should know where you belong to. So my question is, if that fight where we're talking about is not only against repression and against the government or big global firms try to manipulate us, but also to change our kind of our ways of education in terms of thinking about us as individuals in this world. So how could we change this focus on nations anyway?
Suk, maybe you have some.
Oh, okay. I think that's in terms of the boundaries. I find one of the things with internet and real-time web is that you actually cross national boundaries much more easily. So in some ways, it makes the problems more complicated because almost everything is global or international. The boundary between local and international have been blurred. And I think that's why I think that I think people have to be equipped to deal with the complexity of this new situation. And I think when we're talking about the riots, whether it's the UK riots or whatever, one of the interesting things about the media is really that the old system, like in the old system where if you film someone, you need to ask for their permission. Now, because everyone can film someone or anyone walking across the street, the rights are actually not defined or respected. Or for example, there are people who become famous for uploading a photograph, whether it's the guy who photographed the plane landing into the Hudson River in New York, or some other person. Their photographs are being used without their permission and without payment to them or any kind of compensation. So I think the boundaries have shifted, and there's not enough. I think control is not the answer. I think the answer is actually probably some sort of guidelines or some sort of personal response or debate of some sort. Yeah.
Andrews.
I wanted to ask, we have now 20 years, we have a lot of countries in the world that were in surveillance, that were clearly controlled, that were clearly unfree in terms of freedom of expression and freedom to move freely, and these are the Eastern European countries. And actually I wanted to ask you if it's not, what roles do they play? Because there you still have families whose son or daughter might not be a member of European Parliament, and they still know what daddy had to suffer without the digital surveillance. Does this not play a strategic role in how we should think about it? Because there we have societies that are still 1 or 2 generations away from the practical surveillance state, everyday life. And, or why is that not coming out stronger? Or am I wrong? I think maybe Marcos or the others could give us some insight there.
I have not so much knowledge about the Eastern countries, but if I take a look to Hungary, there we have a situation, they are now falling back into some kind of surveillance state, and the majority of the population is behind that. And I have no clue why they don't like all the civil liberties they gained after their revolutions. Maybe it takes 1 or 2 more generations to live in freedom, to say, okay, I like freedom, I want to fight for freedom, until the whole population is in favor of freedom. I have no clue.
It's just as there is some guy who is wondering about why we are here do not talk about British riots. And also, I think the surveillance state actually is greatly developed by Britain. I mean, if you ever trace the history of surveillance, especially you put all kinds of cameras on the street, and I think Britain leads the way. And of course, and China now is just following suit. And whenever there is a big event like we have the Olympic Games or the Shanghai Expo, you can see the government will install even more surveillance equipment all around. And even if the event passes, the equipment will still remain and in use. So what I'm saying is that probably just as Marcus, he talked about the story about the Camerons, he made some remarks about the internet freedom. And so the Chinese media immediately picked his remarks and said, look, you also did this, and you don't have freedom of expression, and you also have government regulation. So we have, we have the logic and we have the rationality. We should do it too. So they get this kind of explanations from the Britain. So I think when we are talking about internet censorship, I will say it is a global phenomenon. It's not China, of course, stands very, in the front of this censorship. But it's a global phenomenon. Also, we can say the great transferring of responsibilities to the service intermediaries. I mean, those service providers are also under heavy pressure from the government side to try to, to put their own censorship mechanism. So what I mean is, I think it's a global challenge. It's a global challenge. It needs a global society to try to tackle this problem.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have run out of time, but I would love to squeeze of the last question for the audience, from the audience, and then we invite all the speakers today to the stage to have the debate and the panel. There? Okay.
I would like to address Marcus. Could you brief us on the debate, the state of discussion along the WSIS process, the World Summit of the Information Society? I know there was a lot of expectation. There was a lot of debate in civil society challenging these summits. One of these summits was in Tunis a couple of years ago. Of recent, I learned that the digital rights have been acknowledged on the UN level as a part of the human rights agenda. So there is some progress, but in general, my impression is that this debate has faced a kind of lull. Could you brief us on this debate?
Oh, I try. I'm not really involved anymore in this debate, which is more or less over because the second summit was 2005, and there was a new process, the Internet Governance Forum process, one time a year on the United Nations level. People come together in a multi-stakeholder environment, so companies, governments, civil society actors to debate lots of different topics. I never had the finance resources to travel to Kenya or somewhere else to attend, but there is a debate. But when I take a look at our German government, there's nobody really interested in these international debates, except there are one or two topics they are interested, like fighting copyright infringements. Our chancellor is meeting together with Sarkozy, and they are debating ways to fight file sharing and other stuff. But when it comes to all the global debates on how we set global rules, there's not so much interest in the German governments, and I think lots of other governments too.
Okay, let's invite David to moderate the debate now. So we have debate here. And some of our speakers this morning, can you come here to this row to join us? You're free, don't need to move. Yeah.
If we were kind, Isaac and I would give everyone a 10 to 15-minute break. We're not kind. We're never born that way. We're going to try to metaphorically right now kind of expand the entire room, expand the discussion for everybody. Isaac is probably the best person I've ever met at synthesizing a bunch of ideas as they happen on the fly, which is what he's doing right now. You can't tell, but there are billions of neurons that are ticking away in his brain right now. He's going to synthesize some of the discussions, some of the patterns and trends that have come up through the day, and give us a presentation of what to look toward in the future, I think also, after this kind of discussion debate period that we have right now. I'm amazed. Ingrid is someone who has been involved in this symposium in the digital communities category for a long time, and she tweeted a little bit ago that this is the most diverse conference that we've had at Ars Electronica ever, in terms of nationality, in terms of gender balance. I mean, I think that probably 3 or 4 years ago, it was basically the Davis Society was where you saw people coming from different countries all across the world to have conversations like this. And it didn't really happen outside of Davis, maybe the United Nations. Now it's happening here. Today, actually, in Zurich, there's another summit, today and yesterday, called the One Young World Summit, which is also bringing young activists together to have a discussion. And it was kind of interesting, at that summit yesterday, Wael Ghonim from Egypt, who is seen as one of the leaders of what is often called a leaderless revolution, asserted once again that the Egyptian revolution was a leaderless revolution. And he said that that was the secret to its success, which is something that Leila also mentioned in her talk. And so I want to ask everyone here, and to the audience also, is that really true? Are these revolutions that claim to be leaderless revolutions, are they really leaderless? Is that really a necessary condition for their success? And is it true that you can't cut off a leaderless revolution? And finally, does that then have a negative impact after the revolution? If there are no leaders, who make the decisions? How do you ensure that these same old forces don't take power once again? So who's going to start? Does anyone disagree that it was a leaderless revolution? Does anyone think that there was a strong leader in Tunisia or in Egypt? Okay, finally. Perfect. And feel free to move in. This is a long conversation.
Okay, I don't know so much details about Tunisia or about Egypt, but I want to throw into that discussion the fact that I just read in the newspaper that after things are cleared out in Libya, 1/3 of the oil of Libya will go to French companies. So one of my problems with that kind of self-organized, leaderless revolutions with anonymous communication and all sorts of things is that you can't really you can't really say who's playing what game and who's acting in whose interest, and that's one of my problems. It's kind of, it's open, it's a transparent process, but on the other hand, it's completely opaque, and you can't say what's really going on there. What do you think about that?
Any other comments about the leaderless revolution? Yes?
I've heard about Egypt, that it's not, I have to put on this because it's irritating. No, I've heard from Egypt that there was a group who was like planning this for several years, like a peaceful uprising, and I think it was called April something, the 24th or so. I saw an Al Jazeera documentation once about it. So it was like really well planned for several years. And also they got advice, for example, from Otbor, which is like the movement in Serbia against Milosevic. So I don't know if you want to call this leadership, but it was, yeah, they very much knew how to guide the people and to make sure that it's an organized but peaceful event. And yeah, maybe you have been talking about this in the morning. I haven't been here, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, if you're going to talk about Egypt, it's really, I mean, April 6th movement is clearly one of the groups, but it's one of the many groups. We don't really see it, but there were labor strikes, there were many other things. And at some point, there were maybe 1 million people in the street. That was quite spontaneous. And if you just look at my data, which is a small slice, but only 1/3 of the protesters had ever been to a protest before. So it was, from all accounts, not a it was not a revolutionary process. I don't want to call it a revolution because it's still a process that was not led by a single political party. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood was there in Tahrir. They are a political party, and they were there in large numbers. There were soccer club fans called Ultras. They were organized. They were there in large numbers. There were youth. There were people from all sorts of walks. So I think in terms of not having a classic political party lead the movement, like, let's say, Solidarity in Poland, it is leaderless. But many groups within it with structure. It reminds me more of the Iranian revolution in 1979. If anything, that's another big urban revolution that had many political parties in it. Now, for the question that you tried to raise earlier, I think that really remains to be seen how these dynamics will transform or not into, say, electoral politics, because Tahrir still has a public presence and power just by being the Tahrir Square. But what happens when elections come in Tunisia, in Egypt, and what will the parliament look like? I don't think anybody has an answer to how that's going to play out yet. It'll be fascinating and very interesting to watch. And it would be a really interesting era if the Middle East becomes a place that comes up with more innovative forms of democratic participation after being for decades a symbol of dictatorship and corruption. So I'm just hoping that it will maybe go in a positive direction.
Should I look this way, or to the screen, or? Well, I think a very interesting asset of these mobilizations is how citizens have learned from each other's lessons, and governments too. So from the beginning, I mean, it's very important to realize that uprisings have not happened overnight, although there were like revolutions and things happening in very specific dates, but organizing and preparing, like laying the ground for certain things that happened one after the other later on, has a lot to do with people knowing each other before, a lot of it online. Organizing citizen bonding and linking, and it is very, very interesting to see how they give each other advice. Syrians get advice from Tunisians in different ways, in get physical get-togethers and online get-togethers. They're learning from the lessons when it comes to censorship, when it comes to ways to pursue freedom. They're learning from each other, and it's also quite interesting how governments in the Middle East and North Africa have each government that's being exposed right now seems to be worse than the one before, and seems to be more ruthless than the one before, because they have learned of what happens when citizens get together by the thousands, by the millions. So they're really, really trying not to make it happen, not to get. Syria is really making an effort into closing public squares, closing access to public spaces, because they know what happens when you get 1 million people in Damascus main square. That's the point of no return. But we haven't gotten there because Syria has had a few months for both activists and the government to know how to prepare for what comes next. So, yeah.
I think that's a really fascinating question of, if you have a leaderless revolution, then how do you know who to trust? And trust is one of those topics, words that's come up a lot throughout the day. I was reminded of one of many of Clay Shirky's aphorisms. He said, fact-checking is way down, but after the fact-checking is way, way up. So I was very impressed when Lena told us that Al Jazeera has been making a lot of mistakes recently about the reporting from Tunisia. We've also seen some mistakes about the reporting from Libya. And then I was extremely impressed by this anecdote of Neda Soltani, this face of Iran, and it turns out isn't the face that we're really used to at all, which just is amazing. Although, again, in your documentary, and I saw on the web that many people have written about the topic, that it was mistaken identity. So the question is, who's responsible for fact-checking these days? Is it, yeah.
I mean, I won't keep saying it, but I see so many examples. I mean, if you follow the Egyptian Twitter sphere, like a newspaper or television will say something, and it turns out there are people on the ground and it's not true, and there's a furious Twitter counter fact-checking. So I've seen this a lot. It's a little more complicated because you can't just turn on your television and trust it, but you know what, that's nothing new. I think there's a lot of, exactly as Clay says, there's a lot of crowdsourced fact-checking that does take place. And in fact, I usually feel like, if you follow the Oslo tragedy where there was the shootings, because this is my job and I'm a media scholar, right? I turned on CNN. It was horrible. It was full of, like, even hours after the police had come forward and said, we have a Norwegian citizen, white guy in custody, CNN anchors were asking each other, well, could he be a hidden Muslim? Could he have been hired by Al-Qaeda? I mean, it was just ridiculous. And my Twitter timeline I had friends in Norway who were telling me what the Norwegian police were actually saying, which I conveyed to other people. So we were able to figure out what was really going on at a much faster rate than CNN, which is kind of ridiculous. I'm not saying organizations like Al Jazeera or CNN don't have a role, but I think they're really under a lot more scrutiny now, and we have people on the ground who can tell us. I mean,
so your personal fact-checking is through Twitter, much more so than CNN, right?
I want to speak to the Neda story. And the interesting thing is that you can find links on the web if you search for mistaken identity or whatever. But you have to remember that the correction, the number of articles that came out saying we were wrong, is like 1% of the articles that say this is the woman. So it's actually very unbalanced. The after the fact apology or fact finding is totally overwhelmed by the millions and millions or thousands and thousands of websites that actually posted the wrong photo. So I think that to me is interesting. That the other thing that I feel is also very important and related to the idea of social media or social web is really that there are deeper reasons for people resisting the correction. It's because there's a cognitive dissonance. They didn't want their martyr to be taken away from them because there's this whole excitement about overthrowing the dictator. So any fact that doesn't match the emotional rush, the emotional participation sometimes gets swept aside because he's a dictator, she's our martyr, you can't take her away from us. Doesn't matter if it's a wrong photo. So I think there's a lot of that, and I think there's a danger in terms of we keep reaffirming the dominant narrative across cultures. We have all this narrative about Egypt and about Syria. We don't really know what they are like as places, and we keep amplifying the facts that reinforce our biases. And I'm not sure if the real-time web really helps it or hurt it. I think it happens both ways. Sometimes it means that the stories that are blown up really, really big are the stories that resonate with our ideas of the other. That's what Egypt is like. That's what Tunisia is like. and because it's convenient, we don't have to think, and we have no time to think when we're tweeting, obviously. So that to me is interesting. How it's not just facts, but it's also emotion, it's also deep cultural biases.
I'd also like to hear from Hu Yong on this topic, because oftentimes when we talk about fact-checking, we talk about citizens trying to fact-check what we perceive as the propaganda of government. But in China, there's also the case of the government trying to fact-check what it perceives as the propaganda of citizens, which I think is a fascinating case.
Recently, Sina Weibo has a new rumor, 辟谣, as in they actually fact-check and refute what they think is inaccurate status updates. So what do you think of that? It's actually the Weibo, the Sina Weibo itself has an account saying that no, you're wrong, no, that's inaccurate, and block accounts for people who give those kind of updates. So does it work?
In fact, rumors have been a keyword in recent Weibo development. I think the very beginning is because of the high-speed train crash. After that, nearly all classes of the Chinese society, they're strongly against the relevant government department, that is the Ministry of Railways. So they not only want to, to trace back whose responsibility it is, but also some of them even they made some proposals that we should dismiss, the ministry, because it's the last castle of planned economy. So we should not let it should be, should be a market mechanism instead of you still have a centralized ministry who are in charge for all the high-speed train issues. So the public opinion is so pervasive. I think the government actually feels an actual threat from the netizens themselves. So this is my personal opinion. I think the rumors, why rumors become so such a keyword, is because of this background. So now you have two kinds of people who are trying to clear rumors. One group is they say they're netizens, so they have a kind of, they form a kind of alliance, which they think their goal or their purpose is to specify whatever they think is rumor. Especially they, they keep close watch on those so-called internet opinion leaders. Whenever those leaders, they might make some mistakes, they will jump up and say, so you are doing this, and so you are so irresponsible. And another group is actually the service provider itself. Sina Weibo, the service provider, they have a small group of people whose main task or whose main job is to make, to make out what is rumor, and they will send a service-wide notice, to all the Weibo users. They told you that this is rumor. You should not believe it. And also, those people who are deemed by the service provider as a rumor, as a rumor monger, his account will be temporarily closed down. For example, maybe last for 1 month. You cannot speak up anymore. You have to wait for the for the months to finish. Then you come back to Weibo. So this is the some basic background information about this rumor thing. So what I say in this is actually the government now feels the real pressure from Weibo's sphere. So it tries to find out whatever faults or whatever mistakes the Weibo users are using. So then they have excuse, or they will do some they will have some great efforts to try to put Weibo in an unethical side of story. So they say Weibo is not a great place for people to express themselves, but it's a place where those rumor mongers, they aggregate and they come together and they spread false news and also the so-called negative news. So it's, I would say the whole thing is a struggle between the Weibo users and the regulators.
Yeah.
Regulators.
Just, I would like to add something and connect this conversation to a different context. Because I think that the idea of fact check is especially important in context as, for example, what we have seen in Tunisia and Egypt and so on. I think for our case, in the case of a developing country, I would say that in the developing world perhaps it might be similar, is that it's not fact check. I would say there's a problem of understanding legitimacy. So how much are these students that go on the streets, claiming for a better education, or those who might go on the streets to claim for health, etc.? I mean, those agendas, those propositions, how legitimate are they? How much people is actually backing those proposals? And the question about legitimacy is especially important because there's a huge disconnection, asymmetry with the political world, with the representational world. Actually, these groups are normally, in our case, not linked. So the political world is not giving responses, not even from the government or the opposition, to these kind of agendas. So I just wanted to share with you the problem we have today with this issue. Though the education reform is very popular and many people are backing it, we yet don't know exactly how many people are behind those that agenda, those propositions. How legitimate is that movement? And I'm sure that this same problem might, exist in other areas. So again, to sum up, it's not, in our case, a problem of fact check of what is right or wrong, what is true or not. In our case, is how legitimate is the person who is using that microphone to make public a given agenda.
Was someone, yep, right there?
I would like to start from that point of legitimation towards the individual again, because for my opinion, in Western grassroots movement, one very big task of the work is not only to work against a specific situation and say no to something, but also to work inside the group with different ways of communication or different ways of acting, especially in ways of non-hierarchical consents, communication and discussion, and also in terms of gender. And that part of the work to create a new space or a new form of society within those grassroots movements is at least the half of the energy which people have to bring into the work, because otherwise it's not working. If you're always against something, if you want to change something, you have to change your own life too. And that is the point which I think is missing in this discussion, because I don't know that much about Egypt and all those how do you say, movements there. But I think, if you question what is coming after that revolution, we should also, I think, focus on that point that right now there is, only the idea of democracy, or maybe direct democracy, but maybe there's, coming up something else, which we have not a name for yet. But the point of changing the whole society goes not only onto the system, and which comes after that, a new system, but also how we change our own personal society-wise ways of dealing with each other.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point, and that's one of the things that I thought was so refreshing about Seok Seok's documentary, is that it really shows the human side and how individual humans are transformed by some of these tools. I mean, there's the case of the homeless woman who spoke at a conference and then put on her biography that she spoke at a conference. And I'm curious about, for all of you, the speakers here, how have your lives been changed over the past 3 to 4 years? I mean, I've seen most of your Twitter accounts. A lot of you have over 1,000 followers. Some of you have over 10,000 followers. You've become kind of online famous. Has this had a serious transformation on your life? Have there been negative aspects about becoming, quote unquote, internet famous? Anyone? Lena, are you willing to talk about this? Many people treat you as kind of a face of, not just a Tunisian girl, but the Tunisian girl. So what's that like after going through something like that?
Well, I hate this. I hate being so exposed. I hate being interviewed all the time, especially that this caused me many problems in my country. People are insulting me all the time. People think that I'm taking advantage of this, so it's really very hard to be known. So I would prefer it if I've been anonymous.
Any other negative aspects of being an online activist and kind of a well-known online activist? Okay, we'll move on to the next question. I think the last question before Isaac gives us his all-encompassing synthesis of today's discussion. The former UK Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, once said, kind of famously, that the Rwandan genocide wouldn't have taken place if Twitter had existed during that time. He probably did not foresee the UK riots. He probably didn't really foresee the recent use of social media by neo-Nazi groups in Europe and other parts of the world, or the use of social media by drug cartels, which have been publishing a lot of beheading videos in Mexico and other parts of Latin America. There are a lot of Twitter accounts in just about every city you can imagine that help drunk drivers circumvent around alcohol checkpoints. So we see all of these different types of uses of social media. And again, I'm curious, do you agree or disagree? Would have the Rwandan genocide have taken place? Obviously, we can only speculate if Twitter had existed. Anyone willing to comment?
I'm going to say he didn't even know about their use of radio as a sort of a lateral tool actually helping propagate the genocide. I mean, I don't know if you guys know the story, but there was a radio station in Rwanda that was heavily implicated in spreading the genocide kind of in a grassroots way. Of course, there's a lot of other factors going on. I just want to put it out there, is that there was communication technologies already involved in it. And there was, in fact, discussion during the genocide on jamming the radio station. And it turns out that it was considered by United Nations, it was considered by the United States, and it was not done, not because of free speech issues, but because they thought it's going to cost too much, which is another. So maybe this kind of shows you, if the world doesn't care, it's not really the technology that stops or starts it.
Does anyone in the room disagree? Or a comment back here?
But I don't think that we would ever assume that British prime ministers really understand technology or would have some sort of vision around it. I think that's probably, over optimistic. Just to fact check a little bit on the use of Blackberry and why it mattered during the riots. I thought it was well known, but maybe not. Most kids, most 16-year-olds do use Blackberry Messenger to speak to each other because it's free. And it was the fact that it was a free service that was predominantly used by sort of people under 20 that made it used by the groups gathering for riots. And then what happened was, because BlackBerry used their own servers, it wasn't so easy for the government to persuade them to give them access to the material. So government actually in the UK, it's sort of the constellation of powers. They had a meeting with Facebook, Google and Twitter, I think it was last week or the week before, a kind of a summit meeting, because Cameron had said, we need to try and close this down. It's kind of interesting. UK position, and the police were there as well, and it was concluded that actually having access to what was happening around social media networks was actually advantageous to the police, and that they could find out more by monitoring these. They were persuaded that they could find out more by monitoring the flow of material than as if they could close it down anyway. And also, this was just reported in the mainstream press, that they could also, of course, use these networks for their own propaganda. So I think this is the interplay of forces that we're seeing. You know, it's not so much one revolution, but you might get one breakthrough and then you get another reversal, and I think that's what's going to play out over the next few years.
Is anyone willing to support this opinion by Gordon Brown that the genocide in Rwanda would not have taken place with Twitter? I'll play devil's advocate then. Zainab says no because of, you know, radio actually contributed to it, and that they were even thinking about shutting it down, but not enough people cared. It would have cost too much money. One of the things that we've seen with Twitter is that it serves this link between what's taking place in a country and what we call the international community or the outside world. So perhaps Twitter would have attracted enough attention to what was taking place in Rwanda, even if it was just 3 or 4 people, that the media would have jumped on it, the internet elite would have jumped on the case, and then people would be wanting to intervene. Does anyone buy that argument? Zainab, you don't buy it either?
I say this with great regret and sadness, but I see no evidence that the world cares about sub-Saharan Africa. We have enough stories. We have an ongoing crisis of HIV/AIDS. We have famine in Somalia. I mean, there's no shortage. I think in that particular case, I can't really explain how we got here, and that's where we seem to be. Now, maybe in the future, I think our mindset in the West needs to change in richer countries, not just West, towards how we see African lives before communication technology can make a difference. Because there are enough Twitter users or bloggers, even from, you know, Somalia. If you do want to find the stories, they're really out there. It's not, I think we're just not paying attention. And again, I say this with, you know, great sadness that this is the case.
Can I add something? I think for me, it is a mistake to think of social media as this neutral medium that you can bring enlightenment to the world because it's neutral. You can shine light on any issue. It's not the case. I think as we can see, some things. I think there's the reality. There's real politics. You know, whether that particular region matters to the dominant superpowers in the world, and there's also cultural perception. You know, I think one of the interesting things I did find with, for example, the Neda story, how the video went viral. If you actually go on YouTube, there are many, many videos of men being shot at point blank. So why did a video about women go viral? Because it buys into the cultural perception of Iran. A young, beautiful, veiled woman, you know, it is a symbol of the repression of, you know, of the regime. So there are many, you know, metaphorical, symbolic forces that reinforce themselves. So I think to just think that, oh, we have this tool and we can use it to shine light on the world is just not likely until fundamental shifts happen, whether in terms of politics or in terms of cultural narrative, dominant narrative.
Can I add one thing? I think that's a brilliant point, because I mean that video worked because it fed and worked with whatever cultural narratives. And I think the dying African child, we don't care as the world, we don't care. And that, if it really is, and if that doesn't change, I don't think the communication by itself would make the difference. And it's just, I think your example is great about that.
It is a really fascinating point. The biases of technology don't necessarily change our own biases that we have as humans.
I think my fear is that the speed of it reinforced them. You know, because they actually spread a soft culture that keeps getting reinforced as trending topics and things like that. I mean, we see that in the perception of China. I mean, there are a lot of stories besides about internet culture in China besides censorship and freedom of speech. But the only stories you really get to hear are still, you know, I think that's why Professor Hu's presentation was so riveting today, because like, oh, no one has ever told me. But probably he's been tweeting about it, but does it really get picked up as a huge media story? It doesn't, because it doesn't resonate with the dominant story about China, which is just completely repressed. So.
But it's also an empowering opportunity for all of us to challenge the dominant media story and also to challenge our own biases of what we pay attention to and not.
Yeah, on the other hand, I think it's good that we get to, really, really interesting points on how we reinforce our prejudices through these new sources of information. But I don't know, it's quite interesting that for the first time, citizens in certain contexts get to describe themselves and present themselves directly in first person. So even if there's a tendency to reassert your own prejudices that you have had for a long time, maybe listening to citizens directly and instead of through the intermediation of others that is like against that trend. So for years we have, for instance, never heard anything about the Arab world that does not have to do with wars, angry people shouting at the TV after getting invaded, of course, no one's happy about that. Like very aggressive images or things related to camels and very traditional backgrounds. So for the first time, we are exposed to images that have to do with civil societies, with efficient use of technology, with efficient ways of organizing, with peace, with citizens standing for peace in an area that's famous for its violence and teaching a lesson of peaceful revolutions and democracy to the rest of the world. And that, I think, it has a lot to do with citizens projecting their own ways through technology that does not need intermediaries to describe them anymore.
I know I'm inspired to overcome tragedy fatigue and to learn more about everything we've heard today and everything that we haven't heard today. But before we have come to the final point of public square squared fatigue, I want to give Isaac an opportunity to give some closing statements about where we're headed next, about some of the patterns that we've discussed today. And yeah, Isaac?
Allowing us to finish today's whole session, especially for our speakers, to conduct so impressive, insightful, and I think foreseeing speeches and give us a basic understanding about what is happening around the world. I'm amazed by many talks because I don't really know so many things, happening from different corners, just from the traditional media or even from my social media experience. I'm heavy social media user by myself, and I believe that even so, I cannot follow and see the whole pictures and doing fact checks by myself. So I'm amazed by today's talks. We all here, complete a square, today, but also including people online from those internet corners, everywhere. So today I want to summarize some of my findings and my feelings about this one-day symposium from our speakers, from these whole experiences. And I want to say that the square is still growing, and it's growing not only in 2 dimensions, it's going to 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions, including the spaces and the time, tempo things, we can all explore together in the future. So I want to raise up 3 questions today from our whole day talk, from our speakers, from our splendid talks. So, we have made the great day, and the suggestion is very profound to give us different kind of feelings and different kind of energies. And we also have billions of users, several billions of users, watching the world online in their own ways by using different kind of new tools that we need to cherish, and we need to keep this kind of value to be continued. So it's about the new scale. It's not just about the heroes, the pioneers of those leaders around the world. Also not about the traditional governance, traditional political science and philosophy. So we want to see that the current 3 billion people, connected people, I mean physically at least, within which 1 billion people on social networking and 2 billion people yet to be connected on the social networks. And we still have 3 to 4 billion people even not physically connected, although they have some simple tools already, but not even have the information accessibility or share their information easily, either under the economic situation or by the pressure of their poor governance, what we can see. So we have just experienced this simulation of the word revolution in this year happening and already finished. The mission, some mission completed and some mission still yet to be defined. However, it's far from, I think it's far from enough to see the word, the whole picture of the word to be changed or to be fulfilled. So this is a challenge to all of us. And it's just a simply glimpse of the whole universe evolution. If you compare it to a long range of time, it's quite simply, too short to make any conclusions about what's the future direction and trend of our human being, the whole society and the whole world. So we need to check that what kind of things we need to do, and how to make things viable and sustainable to keep those values within this spring, this wave of revolution to be kept, and try to distill those really valuable things to live for our next generation or leave the constructive questions to them. I want to say that I'm part of this change. I'm proud of that because I think my sharing online, whether it is totally rubbish or not, I think have been generated some kind of ebbs and flow, with my social networking. They trust my information in some ways. I can sense that. My first question is that it's a philosophical question, about whether our participation of the change, including all of you here, it's a kind of, about you've interfered the change, or a single part of, simply as an observer, which way is the best. So because from the physics, researches, if we want to discover some, fundamental theories of our world, it's better not interfering the world. But the problem is that if you don't interfere, if you don't go into such a, macro detail, will you be able to watch and observe the details and the real reason of what is happening? This is the dilemma and paradox. And I myself believe that, from my research experience, I need to be part of that instead of the purely and merely observer. But it's a question to many people, because just as I said, 2 billion people, they has been connected physically, but it's good for them to be connected in social network or not. Many people ask the questions by themselves, and I believe many people still fear of the problems online today. We see whether it's fact-checking problems or the privacy issues or other, potential risks. So it's a big question to us, whether you want to be part of this change, individually, or you want to be just an observer. It's a question for many people to ask in the next decade. So the potential of this wave leaves many, many reflections. And I think will last a very long time to different countries, to different areas, different demographic and genders, and try to take the influence into different extent. Professor Hu Yong told us such brewing from China, it's in the dawn of the new revolution. We don't know what format of revolution, but it seems very promising from the Chinese grassroots. And the challenge, how grassroots can fully fueled and empowered, is a big challenge to all of us. And Leila's practice gives us more hints that everyone is someone in the society, and we need to connect and collect such kind of forces to form a kind of action in either developed world or the developing world. It's different level of connection, but we definitely need this kind of collective thinking on that. And I'm also impressed by Suk's practices because she showed us it's quite necessary to record everything in our history as an archive to the history, also more importantly as a field to drive the changes. And Zinab showed us the theoretical things we need to summarize for future revolutions, next wave and next wave of next wave. So it's more profound to see those kind of theorists, to give us this kind of interpretations. So we forever may be wrong, maybe I'm wrong, need role models, need heroes, pioneers, like Marcus in Germany, in his community. However, when we talk about social media, it's about the penetration, scale, and everyone. It's not a new concept, suddenly appeared overnight, in this year. From my experience, I think the social media came from the blogging stuff, the Web 2.0 stuff, social networking, from since 10 years ago. It's a long time of brewing for this kind of change. We see it suddenly appeared, but actually it's brewing for a long time. So it's now social networking based sharing and everything that came from many, many times of circles of opening and cultural developing and people's connecting and trusting each other. This process is very long. Even 10 years is not enough. And I think that the Arabic Spring is just accumulate power, of those kind of sharing and technological improvements and social technological, collaboration, and they work together to generate a one-time punch to this community, to this group of areas. So it's a showcase of how this kind of information technology, information accumulation, and social trust, give us this kind of showcase. But we need a series of change ahead, definitely. The punching the country, punching the world from one country to another one. So eventually leave the big problem, big question, another one to us. If the sovereignty versus the human rights, which one is much more important to all of us, to the politicians, to the grassroots people, and everywhere, we see different groups. So it's another big question we need to examine to see if we can participate to have the long-term debate. We also need more innovations, definitely, like our winners today from digital community category. And that's why we are here, to reward them, to give them the credit and to encourage them to keep going, to give us more innovative tools and show us, how technology is important to improve our daily life, improve our social connections, and then generate new models to our human being. It's a new paradigm change. So those designers, geeks, and developers, creators, they have a lot of space to develop their own future innovations. And we also need entrepreneurs to try to market those kind of technologies and tools and products, and to create some new economic models beyond the current, cages we are living in. Those three winners of the digital community give us these kind of hopes and future solutions. We can work together, everyone of us. So at the same time, social changes is not a closed process, just including people from different colonies. We are actually trying to break those borders to work together. So today, everyone could become a hacker to hack different kind of system, in a positive way, on technology, on social system, on those political and democratic system. As a kind of a positive change, I would love to say. We need a kind of open circuit and at large to exceed the current limitations. And everyone makes the crack by themselves, including themselves, to reflect themselves, to change their life. So the question from David, I think, is very profound. Is if those social media things has changed your life, not only about your economic situation, but also your social status and capital of the society. It's very important to change individual and institutions. So it's not the traditional word of media monopoly. The traditional business, they can use the traditional media industry to abuse the power, to use the capitalism to dominate our information flow and try to show people that their importance in the world. But today we see more and more social information, social channels, give us the chance to credit a business, to really show something important, not only the profits, but also the social values. So this is the border breaking to have the influence for all of us in the future, not only to the social values, but also to the economic world. We see the global collaboration as well. Language definitely was the barrier, but now it's becoming more and more not as important as before, but is yet to be changed. And people themselves become the bridge. We always criticize those machine translation, but we need to put the hopes on people connection and social translation. This is the next big thing I think would happen to trigger the international collaboration. Like last year, the Chinese Twitter users, they generate a big wave to become the trend topic of Twitter, by using a simple tag called CN for Iran, to support Iranian Twitters. Although they don't need to read all those posts of Iranian Twitter users, they show the kind of supporting and give them energy, from another side of the world. It's very important, I think. And they follow each other and become the new communication interest to each other. So they share many knowledge on defeating the similar problems in each other countries and about the censorship, issues. So information led the trend back to our human nature, how we trust each other. And it's also already actually the topic David and me defined in year 2009, the symposium. We named the theme as cloud intelligence. The intelligence came from the collaboration and trust relationships in our neurons, in our neuron system. We have 100 billion of that kind of neurons of that. But at the same time, we have 7 billion social neurons in our world. Every one of us could be well connected to generate the social intelligence. We have these kind of predictions of that. But the precondition of that kind of intelligence came from our sharing. Every one of us has a channel to publish and has a channel to subscribe based on their free will, not based on those monopoly, media channels. So it's very important to keep this kind of experiment going. And we are the same around the world. I radically believe that this wave of revolution actually is the Twitter revolution, although many people don't agree that. I call Twitter revolution is not talking about Twitter.com, the business, the single business. I call it, it's a macro concept. It's about information, decentralized information, disseminating quickly around the world. Every one of us share information with different kinds of tools, use different kinds of channels to other people as a neural network, to spread over. And then this kind of information creation, distilling, and then make decisions and social intelligence. That's a very important process. We still need a long time to form and try to live it as the legacy for the future. So we share information, transfer information, and try to create more creative ideas, all the time, from one person to another person, and connect it to each other, build up these persistent networks, that's never happening before. It's the very first time we see that human beings connected in this way. And I have strong reason and many evidence show that it's much more profound than the previous revolutions of media. So it's visible to everyone at first that it's like we see many surprising and amazing things happen, including today's event. But it's not something suddenly happen. It's a kind of paradigm, change to generate this kind of result. So we see a lot of Hollywood movies, to predict something, to try to give us a fantastic feeling about, about illusions. But I think we are experiencing something, we individuals may not understand, but it's also fantastic, to be happening one by one in the future. So it's my optimistic prediction on that, we may see more and more profound happenings in the next decade. And we need to support each other and try to build up new technologies. And information originally in pieces from our brain. We think about those fragmented information and then generate our decisions based on new inputs and new environmental changes. We adapt to that because we have the nature of this kind of intelligent machine. But I think that the current world need to be reorganized, need to be restructured. So we need a new kind of information revolution based on those fundamental things we have created. We cannot lose this frontier to return or to give up those information rights to those monopolies or the big enterprises, all those so-called governance powers. So we need this kind of bottom line to be kept. It's very important, and also we need the international norm to be redefined, like some efforts the Global Net Initiative are trying to do to form some international islands for internet users to solve the problems in the same standard and universal, based on universal value of human rights. So it's very important, and it's even more possible for people around the world from grassroots to form some kind of new entities to work together. It's possible, and I wish the future digital communities can, now community rewards can give such kind of possibility. So we can filter this kind of goodwills internationally, and we need a large number to generate this kind of phenomenon. Anyway, it's not Hollywood, it's our real life, and we need those information to be relevant to our daily life, to change our life quality, to help each other, and build up new economic models and business models. So sharing economy is a new keyword in the venture capital industry this year, because people found that so much productions never been well shared, and we buy a lot of things and goods, but never use maybe 10% of the function of the goods. And it needs to be reconsidered. And the information tools, social networking, give us the chance to share those stuffs physically. So it's a kind of linkage between atoms and memes. And people share the information. I have a car, it's in idling, so anyone else who can drive it, within my network, it's possible. It's not only about this. The information accumulation value could generate more creative ideas to let the business to collect people's real requirements, and don't need to design the products and push people to accept that. They can absorb people's creativity to design their future products. So I predict that the creativity word will becoming boosted, in the coming decade as well. And we need to defeat some of the devil things as well, like those censorship issues from around the world to be harmful to the innovations. Yeah, I strongly argue with some countries, like in China, those authorities, their activities on censorship, is not only, evil, but also very harmful to their own interest and future. So it's a kind of lockup to our creativity. We need to confront these kind of problems. Whatever, we are experiencing a beginning of a new era. And it's repeated already since the last 2 years. And we see the big changes in some countries for their political system. And also we are trying to see that the information from the well-built social networks, what we call social media, give us the power, the creativity, and the collaborative, models that we can build up better worlds. This is very important. So I wish it's not the end of, it's not the beginning of end. It's even not the end of the beginning. It's the beginning of the beginning, okay? So it's very much like many complex we are experiencing. We are a single person, a single neuron in the macro intelligence. How we perceive the world, how we participate is so important. So the last question is, if we are living in the information pool world or information rich world, it's very hard to be answered, because to many people, they think that information obesity, to their daily life. So they refuse to accept new kind of tools and technologies. But actually, from another side, they felt the information is not enough. The appropriate information is not enough. So we need some new kinds of innovations in the future to give us this kind of change. And also we need to change our attitude, to form this kind of community and this kind of alliance that we can build the information world better. It's a kind of filtering of the social power. I strongly believe that, but I need proof with you together. Thank you so much for attending. David, any? So thank you again for all the speakers today. We need to see each other online in the future. Yeah, and all the audience here, I welcome you go online to follow those people. And they're really very active to show us their thoughts, to leak their information from their brain all the time. Thank you again.